or other management might be a sub-discipline that could be addressed with the equipment.
Yes, so we're looking at, like, for example, content management is listed inside there. We also talk about how to capture ARs, how do you store that. So there is that inside the ATTP. Now, eventually what will happen with the ATTP, as this new ADP and the doctrine changes come out, we'll split out the actual theories and pieces will go up into the higher parts of the doctrine, and the ATP then will focus strictly on the how-to portions of that. So there's a little bit of combination of both in the ATTP right now, and we'll eventually split that out. Yes, so those are addressed on content management and how that function works. But we still need to build, as we get to ATP, we'll really start to add to that to make that heavier, stronger, so it really gets more into the deep dive into how those functions are really done.
Okay, in the spirit of jointness, we have one question from the Marine Corps.
Outstanding. Thank you for the opportunity. Colonel Andy Murray from Central Command here in Tampa. One of the panel members mentioned that your KM program was in its infancy. At CENTCOM, we haven't even consummated a relationship as of yet with knowledge management. Joe, you mentioned that you work for the Chief of Staff. I'm curious, was there discussion about where you should be positioned before arriving at the decision that you would work for the Chief of Staff? Because that's where we are at this point.
Correct. And that was part of the, I would say, negotiation and the thinking of the leadership. General Wallace commissioned a study, the predecessor, General Dempsey, several years back for an IM-KM study, said that there should be a CTO within TRADOC, should be an HGV or an SES, and it should work for the DCG, Deputy Chief of Staff, Commanding General, the Commanding General Chief of Staff. And that's what we did, and that's continuing. At each of the centers of excellence, virtually all of them work for the Deputy Commanding General or the Deputy to the Commanding General, which is the civilian SES equivalent. The idea there is, as a transformational and key enabler agent across the command, you get to touch and look at a lot of the business, if you will. A lot of the things are ongoing. So it's there's an integration, there's a synchronization, and those kinds of things that fall within that. And so that was it's a leadership decision. I realize that some leaders are more comfortable putting it in an operational area, but in virtually all of the centers of excellence at TRADOC and the MSOs, they work for the Deputy Commanding General. And we subscribe to that because it is the broadening, and some are even leading the Commanders Initiatives groups at one of the centers. So it is a key element where the information and integration and synchronization occurs. So I subscribe to that level. That's why in the building, I think it needs to be in the CMO's office, and my DCG, General Sterling, says it needs to be in the Office of Business Transformation, the proponent, go-to person. That help you?
Thank you. Sir,
Okay.
in our doctrine, it's
all right,
supported going to the Chief of Staff. And by the way, we train a Navy guy, so start.
So there's a possibility.
Yes, sir.
Danger close.
There are some more questions, I know, and we'd be glad to stand behind and follow on with some of these, but I'd like to move on to the next area, which is, in order to implement, I don't really can hear you on that. In order to implement a successful knowledge management program, you have to have professionals that support that. And Bob Nielsen, when he was the KM advisor to General Sorensen in CIOG-6, he commissioned, the Army commissioned a study on what are the competencies necessary for a successful knowledge management person. And a model came out of that, and let's go to the next slide. There you go. Out of that came 10 competencies. There is a number of levels of detail to these, and the idea here was for the generating force, as well as some of the operating force characteristics, but the generating force particularly, these are the kinds of capabilities and skills that we need in our professional workforce. So we took on that model at TRADOC and worked with the other services in a meeting down at JIFCOM with the JIFCOM Joint Services Staff College and the other services, and came up with an idea that we need to find a civilian institution that can help us get there, as well as can we leverage some of the work out of the National Defense University. So a combination of that effort resulted in a program of training and education that is currently run by Old Dominion University. If you are a member of or want a degree from ODU, you can get up to 12 credit hours for the 300 hours that were structured for that course. In addition, there's some additional training at Fort Gordon for information assurance, project management, some of the technical skills that the Signal Center of Excellence is best at doing. So what we did was we derived a professional a model for the training, and these are modularized. 60% of it's delivered online, and we have 17 interns from TRADOC across the Army, 25 interns that are taking this course. It may not be perfect, but it's an attempt to move forward the rock down the road that we felt there was a gap, a training and education gap. We have difficulty in describing what's the elevator speech for knowledge management, and then trying to get it done and implementing is the difficulty. And you have to have a professional workforce to do that. They have to be trained, educated in that area. And we're working down that path. So I'd like to go through the panel members quickly so we get from the floor some insight into, is this a good idea, bad idea, here's ways to enhance it, as we look quickly at how they may have applied it. And I know some of them have representatives in the training and education program.
As I mentioned earlier, one of our strategic objectives is to build knowledge management competency, and the way we do that is by training and educating our workforce, not only the KM professionals but also the workers. And at the current time, what we're doing is we're teaching really ad hoc into 17 courses within the Army Medical Department. If they invite us to teach an hour, we'll go in there and teach an hour about knowledge management. And we focus it on knowledge management principles, but we also focus it on our medical warfighter forum, because we want to make sure that people are aware that it exists and that they have key resources that they can go to. So it's usually a 1-hour course. We teach into the new employee orientation course. As new employees come to Fort Sam Houston and attend that course, we are invited to teach there. We also teach into the orientation to training processes course, and that's for training personnel coming into the AMED Center in school. We teach into different MOS courses, so they might hear the same briefing twice. And right now we are working with what we call the Civilian Lifelong Learning. It's a program that was established within the AMED Center in school that is professional development for employees. And it's going to be expanded to the enterprise also. And we're developing a course right now that is going to provide some training there. It's going to be a 3 to 4 hour course. And we believe in sharing and reusing. So we will be working here with your group to see what we can use your courses into our course, but we're going to only give a 3 to 4 hour course. We want to make sure that it's centered on Army Learning Concept 2015, where it's not just by PowerPoint, but it's interactive with the students. And eventually we're going to develop a solid education and training strategy to determine how to train AMED across the enterprise.
We started off with a basic course, and we found that the way that the Army trains is via comic books. So the basic course 1, if you look at it, is very simple, and some people may say, well, this is too cartoonish. But all the training manuals, or if you want to find a maintenance manual, it's all done via cartoons. So the first course that we did is the basic course, and it just introduces you to a KM situation. And it talks about what KM is. And everybody knows the first one is the guy sends out an email and says, here's a tasker, I'm going away on vacation for 2 weeks, have an answer back to me when I get back. And then it just goes through the scenario of how the 5 different people respond to that email. It's no other information, just that email with a tasker and how people go through the respond to it. The second course builds on the KM practitioner. As he walks into the commander turns to him and says, "You're my KM." What we did is it's an avatar based and it allows you to choose whether or not you want to be a civilian or soldier as you go through it. And a lot of it is because when you click on it, you can identify with the individual. So it's set for both civilians and soldiers walking through the same scenario. The course builds on developing the tools. How do I get the tools? Who do I talk to? How do I talk to people? It's doing assessments. It's going back and looking at metrics. How do you establish metrics, especially when you start reading through and you read somebody's metrics of what they're trying to do. And as a practitioner, how do you go back and help them with their metrics? Well, it goes through and it labels metrics in 3 formats: system, output, and outcome. So you have to look at it and say, what is the metric that you are trying to apply? Is it a system metric? I want everybody to be able to log on to the network and apply for this program. The metric is an output. I got 100 people to apply for a physical fitness. I got 100% in my area. Well, that doesn't really go back to the outcome. Was the outcome that 100 people lost weight, which then reduced the medical expenditures that we're having because of what we're doing in medical? So it allows you to go back through and find why you're doing it within the metrics. The assessments, there's several assessments that we don't put down one. We give you one example, but we show you that there are other examples, because when you do an assessment, you have to look at your organization. And you can't apply a cookie cutter to every organization. Otherwise, there would only be one person sitting up here. There are several ways of doing it. So, thank you. What we're trying to develop after that course is we sat down and we said, you know, there's a lot of questions that are coming back to us, and so we said we need to develop a seminar afterwards. So we developed a 2-day seminar. And after we finished with the 2-day seminar, we said, you know, there's more involved with this, because we did a lot of back and forth discussion on the seminar. And then is there a 3rd day where somebody says, can you come sit with me in my cubicle? And so we have the KM cubicle. Where people want to know, am I doing the right way of assessing? And the assessment started with the individual doing the assessment and then taking it to an organization. That organization may be the 4 people sitting in your cubicle area. How do you share information between the 4 of you? Right? Then it goes into a larger area. So the seminar really helps you develop from yourself into a larger organization and how you can have an impact. And our next step is to work with Mr. Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, work with Lieutenant Colonel Morrison, and how do we bridge from our aspect of looking at MCOM, and all we do is for the 4th generation, and moving that KM practitioner during the course and moving him into, he now has orders to the operational field.